Hey, what's up guys? JayzTwoCents here, and I'm excited because I have got a chance to check out the brand new GTX 1080 hybrid from EVGA. You guys know that EVGA has been pretty big on making hybrid classes for the 970, the 980, 980 Ti, and all of that. But this one's a little bit different than what they've done in the past. We're gonna talk about that today. We're gonna talk about what makes this different than previous hybrid models. And then of course, we're gonna put it through the paces. Yeah, so strap in guys. This is gonna be a pretty epic graphics card, if it holds up at least to the expectations, because you know, gamers, they've got some high expectations. Are you sick and tired of trying to find a gaming headset with a mic worth more than 2 cents? You see what I did there? Well, you're in luck because Massdrop has a drop going on the highly popular Antlion mod mic. The mod mic offers amazing voice clarity, and with its magnetic mount allows you to attach the mic to your favorite pair of cans, turning any pair of headphones into a high-end gaming headset instantly. Want to learn more? Then follow the link down below. So let's start this video off by talking about what makes this a quote-unquote hybrid card. No, it's not a Prius. It's electric, so it doesn't run on gasoline or anything like that. But it's the fact that it has an air cooler built onto the card to cool things like VRM and memory. But it also has, obviously, a all-in-one water cooling loop on there, in this case a 120 millimeter self-contained water cooling unit to keep the core cool. So it's kind of two independent cooling systems designed to keep the card as cool as possible. Now, EVGA introduced its hybrid series graphics cards with the GTX 980, and that launched in September. Well, the 980 launched in September of 2014, and the hybrid came like early 2015. So you guys can see how long ago that was. But since then, they've actually made a few changes, and what I want to talk about here is two things that really differentiates the 1080 hybrid from the other hybrid models, as I kind of alluded to in the beginning of this video, and that being one, the 980, 980 Ti, and the 970, that's kind of the order the hybrid cards released, were based on reference PCBs. That's the PCB blueprint and design as made by NVIDIA, and then EVGA came up with a custom cooling solution for a all-stock, 100% untouched graphics card board, and then called it a hybrid, which is perfectly fine. But this time around, they actually are making the hybrid on the For the Win PCB. So it's one step up from the SC, which has got things like 10+2 power phase. It's also got on there dual BIOS, which is going to give you things like a more aggressive fan curve for the fan on the PCB. And it's also going to allow you to be able to up the power limit, which is going to be a good thing because you want to take advantage of the cooled graphics card that's being cooled by water. So you're going to see a lot of benefits to a water-cooled / hybrid graphics card, because you're not going to see temps that are nearly as high as an all air-cooled graphics card, even something with custom air coolers like the For the Win air-cooled cards have. But you're also going to see a much more steady and lower voltage going into the graphics card, which means lower temperatures. But you're also going to see a much more stable clock. And I don't mean necessarily a stable overclock. I mean a stable core clock where GPU boost is not going to be bouncing around all over the place, because you're never going to get near the temperature target that the air-cooled cards are. So it doesn't have to do any sort of dynamic throttling whatsoever of the core clock, so you're going to get a very consistent speed, which really makes a hybrid card like this a huge benefit. Now, something else they changed with this particular cooler is the fact that it has a different fan on it. In the past, all of the hybrid cards, like I said, 980, 980 Ti, 970, had a blower style fan on it, which can still be fairly noisy, even though they are not running at nearly as high of an RPM if you were dealing with like a standard blower card, like on a reference card or a founder's card. But that style fan, that little turbine fan, is still very, very noisy. So they've opted to go with their kind of a reverse blade swept fan design like you would find on their ACX coolers, which means an immediate direct downdraft of air right onto the VRMs, and you're also going to get a lot less noise and wind chopping sound, if you will, with this cooler. So they've actually made quite a few changes this time around, and I'm excited to see how this actually performs on the For the Win card, because for the first time, we should see some very respectable results in things like temperatures, standard boost clock speeds, and overclocking. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the best part of the video, the benchmarks.
Transition.
So full disclosure here, all of the tests that you saw were on the slave BIOS, which is a little bit more aggressive fan curve on the board for the VRMs and a higher power limit. But I didn't change the power limit, I left everything default. But I did go to the slave BIOS immediately because I also played around with overclocking. Now yes, you did see a 2164 max overclock speed on that chart, but all the tests you saw were run at 2025 because that's where the card boosted up to by itself. And that's where I left it. I didn't change any of the settings for any of the benchmarks that you guys see. The only chart that you guys would see where I overclocked it so that you could see how much of a benefit there was in Firestrike. All the rest of the tests were, but it was actually denoted on there that it was OC'd. So all the rest of the tests were done at factory out-of-the-box settings on the second BIOS. So really these benchmarks should be no surprise. It sits right around where all the other 1080s are. It just does it at a much, much lower temperature. But really the point of this card here is simply to do it with better acoustics and better overclocking headroom in terms of temperatures on a chip that can otherwise get pretty damn hot. I mean, 16 nanometer FinFET is a pretty small chip with a lot of focused heat, and the water cooling unit here on the hybrid's having no problems handling that. But you might have noticed on the chart that we saw 51C as a max temp. In fact, I'm sitting at 51C right now. And let me talk about that for a second here, because that's warmer than I would have liked to have seen this card get, especially since some of the other hybrids in the past sat right around 43 to 44C. You have no control over the fan on the radiator as it's set up. Precision X does not control the speed of the fan on the radiator, it controls the speed of the fan on the card for cooling the VRMs. Now, keeping VRMs cool is obviously very important, but they have their own dynamic fan control set up based on water temperature that allows the fan to go faster as it starts to get warmer. And right around the 51, 52C is where it starts to ramp up that fan a lot. So you should never really see hotter than about 51 or 52. And I keep looking behind me because I've had this looping now for about 45 minutes, just doing more temperature testing, and it's sitting at 51C as we sit right now. But the radiator fan has started to speed up. But down in the 40s, the radiator fan is pretty much running at an idle speed, which I feel is a little too conservative because the fan that they used is not very loud, and they can get away with higher RPMs and in a closed case. Remember, I've got this thing in an open test bench, and right behind me, I cannot hear it. What I hear is my pump on my test bed. And you could get better temperatures with a little better fan curve, or at least give the consumer control over that fan. So I wasn't happy with those results, and what I did was I ended up taking off the stock fan to do some testing here, and I took an EK Vardar fan and put that on, which is a 4-pin PWM fan, and plugged it into the motherboard. Now I could do that because the fan that comes with this is a standard 3-pin fan that is Molexed right in the middle of the cable, so it's not hardwired in where you'd have to cut it or leave the fan on flopping around. You can actually remove the fan entirely, plug in your own fan to the motherboard, and control that through motherboard software. In my case, I use SpeedFan. But with the Vardar fan, a 1450 RPM fan, I could run it at about 1213 RPM, or 1200 to 1300 RPM. It's not very loud. Have control over that, and got the temps to come down significantly. In fact, I saw 44C by changing out the fan. Didn't get really any louder, just used a higher quality fan, and was able to get much better temperatures while overclocked. That 44C, guys, was at that 2164 megahertz overclock number that you guys saw in that chart. So I got curious, and I put a second one on there in push-pull, and ended up seeing that come all the way down to almost 41C. It was like 42, it sometimes hit 41, go back to 42. So we saw almost a 10C drop in temperatures by changing out the fans with something more high static pressure and a little bit higher RPM. So it's something that you can do, at least with this kit, is you can upgrade the fan if you want to. Now, something else that this card features, as well as the rest of the For the Win and classified graphics cards from EVGA, is a full RGB LED control. And you can control that either using Precision X or using the LED visualizer built into the GeForce Experience app. So I obviously made mine green because I have a green test bed. And you guys are going to call me a fanboy anyway, but I like green. It's kind of like a Slimer green. I really like it. So anyway, there's that. It is retailing at the time of making this video. EVGA US pricing is $729. It's got a premium, but if you look at what some of the other cards are costing, and with the kind of screwy pricing with the 1080, it's up to you to decide whether or not it's worth it. The temperatures are obviously kept well in check, even more so when you put on a custom fan and start playing around with fan curves, but it's definitely It's definitely going to give you a hell of a gaming experience in games with the amount of FPS that a 1080 can draw, or can render, draw. It technically draws and renders, whatever. You guys get what I'm trying to say, but it's time to go. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what other cards you want me to review in the future. I still have a GTX 1080 classified that I've got to do my review on. I do also have a For the Win 1080 and a 1070. I've also got more AMD cards I've got to look at. This has turned into such a GPU channel. But I've also got an EK water block for the Titan X Pascal card. So maybe we'll be doing some water-cooled Titan X stuff. What the heck, I might as well do it. It's the two things I love, graphics cards and water cooling just smooshed into one. So you guys can look for that in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Check out the description for other links to stuff, or just come and follow me and say, hey, what's up on Twitter or Instagram. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.